Hello everybody, we're going to hit you with another presidential election. This one, the election of 1888. Grover Cleveland trying to go for the second term. Can he get it done? Let's find that out right now. Now, as always, we're going to start off with the incumbent party. And for the first time in a little while, it is the Democratic Party. The Democratic incumbent, Grover Cleveland of New York, he really isn't going to face any opposition to his renomination, and he's easily going to receive it at the Democratic National Convention. So the big issue is going to be his vice president. His sitting vice president, Thomas A. Hendricks, dies 8 months into his job. So the Democratic National Convention gets to choose his new running mate, and it is going to be Allen G. Thurman of Ohio, who gets chosen as his running mate. Now, the Democratic platform largely confines itself to a defense of the Cleveland administration. They support the reduction in the tariff and taxes in general, as well as statehood for the Western Territories. Now that we have our Democratic ticket of Cleveland and Thurman, let's get to the Republicans. Now, the Republicans are putting out their list of candidates, and they're as follows. Indiana's Benjamin Harrison, Senator John Sherman of Ohio, Michigan's Russell A. Alger, Indiana's Walter Q. Gresham, Iowa Senator William B. Allison, and Chauncey Depew of New York. Now, at the end of the day, it is going to be Benjamin Harrison who receives the nomination for president, and the Republicans mainly choose him because of his war record, his popularity with veterans, his ability to express the Republican Party's views, and the fact that he lived in the swing state of Indiana. Harrison's going to bring along for the ride Levi P. Morton of New York as his running mate. Now that we got the Democratic ticket of Cleveland and Thurman and the Republican ticket of Harrison and Morton, let's put these guys into the ring and let's see who wins this thing. Now, heading into the campaign, Cleveland set the main issue of the campaign when he proposed a dramatic reduction in tariffs in his annual message to Congress in December 1887. Cleveland contended that the tariff was unnecessarily high and that unnecessary taxation was unjust taxation. Meanwhile, the Republicans responded that the high tariff would protect American industry from foreign competition and guarantee high wages, high profits, and high economic growth. Now, this argument between free trade and protectionism goes all the way back to the tariff of 1816. Now, in practice, the tariff is pretty much meaningless on industrial products since the United States was the low-cost producer in most areas and could not be undersold by the less efficient Europeans. Nevertheless, the tariff issue motivated both sides to a remarkable extent. Now, besides the obvious economic dimensions, the tariff argument also possessed an ethnic dimension. At the time, the policy of free trade was most strongly promoted by the British, and so any political candidate who ran on free trade instantly was under threat of being labeled pro-British and antagonistic to the Irish-American bloc. Cleveland neatly neutralized this threat through a fishing rights dispute. Now, Harrison was well funded by party activists and mounted an energetic campaign by the standards of the day, giving many speeches from his front porch in Indianapolis that were covered by the newspapers. Meanwhile, Cleveland himself did not campaign, and he even forbade his cabinet from campaigning. So Allen G. Thurman ends up doing most of the campaigning, and he is 75 years old, actually. Now, getting into something called the Blocks of Five. Now, the Blocks of Five came about when William Wade Dudley, an Indianapolis lawyer who was a tireless campaigner and prosecutor of Democratic election frauds, was made treasurer of the Republican National Committee by Harrison. The campaign was the most intense in decades, with Indiana dead even, pretty much. Indiana being Harrison's home state. Although the National Committee had no business meddling in state politics, Dudley wrote a circular letter to Indiana's county chairman telling them to divide the floaters in the blocks of 5 and put a trusted man with the necessary funds in charge of these 5 and make them responsible that none get away and that all vote our ticket. Dudley ends up promising adequate funding. Now, this preemptive strike, so to speak, backfires on him when the Democrats get a hold of this letter, and they distribute hundreds of thousands of copies nationwide in the last days of the campaign. Now, few people believed Dudley's denials because of his unsavory reputation, and a few thousand floaters did exist in Indiana. These are men who would sell their votes for a couple of bucks. They were always divided 50-50 and had no visible impact on the votes. Now, the attack on the blocks of 5 with the suggestion that the pious Benjamin Harrison, who was a Civil War veteran, by the way, was trying to buy the election that enlivened the Democratic campaign, and it stimulated the nationwide movement to replace ballots printed and distributed by the parties with secret ballots. Now we're going to get into another important aspect of this campaign, and that is the Murchison letter, in which a California Republican named George Osgoodby wrote a letter to Sir Lionel Sackville West, the British ambassador to the United States, under the false name of Charles F. Murchison, describing himself as a former Englishman who was now a California citizen, and asked how he should vote in the upcoming presidential election. Sir Lionel wrote back, and in the Murchison letter indiscreetly suggested that Cleveland was probably the best man from the British point of view. Remember, Cleveland campaigned on free trade. He thought these protective tariffs that the Republicans were proposing was unfair to workers. The Republicans get a hold of this, and they published a letter just 2 weeks before the election where it had an effect on Irish American voters exactly compared to the Romanism and rebellion blunder of the previous election. Sackville West would eventually be removed as British ambassador, and it's going to have an effect on the results, which we'll get to right now. Benjamin Harrison is going to win this election. The Republicans are going to come back into the White House. He's going to win 233 electoral votes in 20 states. Cleveland's going to lose his bid for a second term, 168 electoral votes in 18 states. This election was basically decided by New York. Had Cleveland won the state of New York, he would have won re-election. Now, Cleveland did win the popular vote, 48.6% to 47.8% for Benjamin Harrison. But remember, these are indirect elections for the presidency. So Benjamin Harrison wins the presidency because he wins in the Electoral College. But this is the third election in American history that a candidate wins the popular vote but does not win the election. Now, before we end this video, Francis Folsom, who had married Cleveland in the White House in 1886, tells the White House workers when the Clevelands were moving out of the White House and the Harrisons were moving in, that to take good care of the White House because they would be back in 4 years. Did Francis Folsom had a part-time job as a psychic? We'll see in the election of 1892, which we'll talk about next time. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, go on ahead and watch those if you want. And with that, we will see you next time.